One of our listeners has asked me to provide a content warning before episodes of Tales from the Pit, just in case there's listeners out there who, although they are interested in depression and other psychological challenges, might be triggered or re-traumatized by some of the heavy topics we get into on this show. And I thought that was a great idea, so thank you for the suggestion, and I'll be doing that from now on. This week's episode is an interview with Jamila Dawson on the topic of sex, sexual identity, sex positivity, that whole area. So if you are sensitive to sexual topics or my mom, you might want to skip this one. Hi, Mom. Please don't listen to this one, my own mom. And if you do, just don't ever tell me you did, because we can never speak about it. And if that goes for you as well, then feel free to join us next time. But for those who feel ready to brave the pit, let's begin the episode. Here it goes. Coolio, Keenan and Kel, circa 1966. Hopefully, for all of us, this is as close as you'll ever get to a Michael Swaim sex tape. It is a tape, metaphorically speaking at least, of me describing some terrible sex that I had. Admittedly, audio only is not the traditional form of sex tape, but much like the Steven Seagal, Sylvester Stallone, or Gene Simmons sex tapes, the visuals could only be a liability. So as Sly would say, let's stoke the laughs, table the walls, and slay my shame, because it's time for the adventures of Menage a Trois, the creep crusader, who strikes fear in the hearts of himself by doing sex stuff he's not at all comfortable with. Faster than a speeding bullet in the bad-at-sex way, more polyamorous than a locomotive, able to damage loved ones in a single betrayal. Look, there, between the pan of soggy chicken wings and the naked octogenarian. It's awkward. It's ashamed. It's a stupid man. Yes, a stupid man, feeling like a strange visitor from another planet, who came to Earth with powers and abilities exactly equal to those of mortal men. A stupid man who can have a threesome without achieving an erection or otherwise enjoying it at all. A stupid man who can bend reality with his bare mind and who, disguised as Michael Swaim, mild-mannered comedian for a once great metropolitan website, fights a never-ending battle for the sort of sex internet porn promised him, his own warped expectations of what a man is supposed to be, and the Armenian way. See, I used to be a pushover. Not in a quirky, fun way, in an unhealthy way that invited weird power dynamics into my relationships and left resentment to fester in me unchecked, like so much super soldier serum. As a result, and through bad luck, I ended up in more than a few relationships where the other person had all the power, or powers, super strength, mind control, laser vision, you name it. That superpower that makes your partner feel an overwhelming sense of guilt the whole time for no reason. They definitely had that one. But I invited it in. I built my very own Suicide Squad, just as shitty and irrational as the movie version, and then begged my partners to marshal them against me. Because I was looking for someone to tell me how life worked. An authority figure. And I was too scared of fucking up to pipe up when something didn't feel right. Like how it didn't feel right when I first agreed to enter into an open relationship. But I did it anyway because, hey, it felt like the kind of thing I was supposed to feel right about. Right? So the stories I'm about to tell, the comic issues I'm going to illustrate, puns, they aren't meant as a judgment of the full spectrum of human sexuality. But part of that spectrum must include what I now know that I am. A mostly straight, cis guy into loving, intimate sex with a single partner. The important thing is to find your own sexual identity, not the one you think that you were meant to find. It's the difference between Bruce Wayne and Batman. One, your capable public self, a pillar of the community. And the other, you in a fursuit with rubber nipples exploring your taboos. Issue number 0, the origin story of Stupid Man. Like all superhero origins, it involves shady dealings, secret enclaves, and weird goo. While a mere lad, Stupid Man was bitten by a radioactive porn star and gained super self-esteem issues, so that when a girlfriend brought up the idea of an open relationship a decade later, he thought WWDDD, where the first set of double Ds stands for Dirk Diggler. What an idiot. Stupid Man, with the power to ignore panic attacks, intense nausea, and inorgasmia in the interest of watching his girlfriend cheat on him with another woman, something that's supposed to be hot, and it's fine if it is to you, but it just made me feel cheated on. By the way, I'm Stupid Man. Stupid Man is me. And until I learn to listen to my own spider sense, which unfortunately comes in the form of vomit, I was trapped living out such unsavory adventures as Issue number 3, Dr. Mood and the Frantic Foursome, wherein Stupid Man is approached by an elderly woman at a nude swingers party, feels too awkward to say no when she propositions him, and almost starts to weep when she begins the encounter by removing her dentures. Issue number 9, The Hall of Mirrors, wherein Stupid Man drives to the beach while his girlfriend cheats on him with another woman in the back seat, eyes glued to the rearview mirror like it was the T-Rex chase from Jurassic Park. Total number of erections in car? 0. Total number of erections outside car? Well, who can say? Issue number 10, The Mall of Hearers, wherein Stupid Man explodes on a shopping trip, demanding that his partner stop guilting him for fucking a girl he only fucked because he felt so jealous about the guy she fucked without asking him if he was even okay with her fucking a guy, and then demanding he fuck someone to make it even. Naturally, once the fucking was mathematically evened out, the jealousy immediately ceased and everything went very smoothly. Issue number 22, Tool Time, wherein Stupid Man tries to figure out if he might be gay or not by, well, being gay with some gay guys. It turns out he's not gay, but now walks around for months filled with a vague sense of shame and confusion he doesn't deserve. Was that the most healthy way to handle the journey of finding one's own sexual identity? I don't think so, Tim. Issue number 69, The List of Craig, wherein Stupid Man, now single, has sex with every imaginable type of body, age, size, orientation, all to try and figure out what the hell sex is supposed to feel like. STDs contracted? 0. Good. Insight gained into own sexuality? Also 0. Bad. The mystery endures. Issue number WTF, entitled, You Gotta Be Fucking Kidding Me, wherein Stupid Man watches his cat get run over, but then his partner won't come home to console him because she's having sex with a new guy she fancies, a fact she is not shy about elucidating over the phone. You know, the hot swinger lifestyle every man dreams of. Issue number 101, The Black Box, wherein our hero faces his most sinister adversary yet, his own baggage from previous relationships. Can his new love withstand the waves of radioactive chaos rays he emits? Assumptions are made, blame is laid, and the righteous rage that might have once been displayed to a different maid is instead misplaced where it can only cast shade. Sorry, I guess we're rhyming now. Well, let's keep it going. That's one of my superpowers, too. So, here's a poem I wrote to process my feelings after that episode, when I almost lost my true love, the only real partner I've ever had, over a little black box of pornography, emails, pictures, and messages that I'm ashamed of, that I didn't want anymore but couldn't get rid of because they seemed to be, in some way, my sexual identity. The poem's called Crushed a Flower. There aren't any jokes. I crushed a flower underfoot, a shock that I thought the root could not survive. I underestimated the resiliency of the place I placed my boot. I burned a tower down to soot, somehow still amazed the change a blaze can make in wood. I raked the ashes to say, "Forgive me, Lord, for I know now what you're due." I crashed a jet plane into you, but there was good shit in there too, and if FEMA can't agree to convene and exhume soon, I hope the rubble settles so you can at least see the moon. I crushed a flower underfoot, and as I knelt to inspect the wound, somehow I knew the wound was a warning that I walked on a road to ruin. I turned a ruin into a tomb. Writ large on the doorway, the sign of doom. Stayed a day or two in the shade to pray to the shrine I made to her, and her name is you. I built a wall in outer space, consolidated my power base, because it takes a lot of force to bang your head against a wall till it breaks and you can't see your fucking face. I crushed a flower underfoot, tried to scry our future from petals strewn in blood. All the augury offered me was the same stuff my stomach said it would, that I hurt the girl I love. So I pray for strength from the sun above and give thanks that my fate is thus, to stay patient and awake in this place and awake the fateful coming of another sacred bud. In the end, I am eternally grateful that Jennifer confronted me about that hard drive, worked with me through it, and finally showed me the way I actually like to have sex. I like to have sex by making love because I am shy and adorable. I don't really care how you like to have sex, but I do care that you find out what you like, and that you listen to your body's clues, and that you don't let exploration turn into a situation that you feel trapped within. Rushing things, expectations, FOMO, shame and elation and guilt, and the urge to connect with others. It's a tricky, messy balance to strike, especially in a country that is deeply confused and confusing on the topic of sex. That's why I turned to a sexpert to help us navigate and see if we can't take some of the stigma off of discussing these topics. Please join me in welcoming Jamila Dawson, therapist, kink enthusiast, sex-positive person, and our guest this week on Tales from the Pit. All right, so let's see. Get that as close as it can comfortably be.
Okay.
And we should be fine.
Let's see.
Yeah.
I think that should be good. Okay.
All right. Well, the toilet sounds ended, so we can get started.
Good, because that would be awkward. People are
Yeah.
like, I want to use the bathroom.
Exactly. Subconsciously, yeah. That's the effect I like with all my shows,
Right,
is
like-
that you subconsciously want to use the bathroom.
Right.
And that's what's great about a podcast. You can.
Right, you really can. Just keep listening and pee or whatever.
Well, my guest today in the pit, I think bathroom time is a good segue to a pit of depression, is Jamila Dawson. Jamila, thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
And could you just introduce yourself, tell us a little about why you were interested in coming on the show?
Sure. Well, my name is Jamila Dawson, and I am a sex therapist. I'm also a kinky person and a polyamorous person, and I'm also a person who manages depression. So the invitation to talk about depression and how it influences sexuality was like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. Let's do that.
Awesome. Well, then it sounds like you've got a lot to say. So does your depression hinge often on your sexuality or like issues in romance?
I mean, it's always a piece in terms of, when do I disclose it? Do I feel like going out because my depression is really flaring or not? As a kinky person, it's been really interesting that when I play consistently, my depression symptoms drop drastically.
Oh, okay.
And so kink is actually part of my mental health regimen.
Yeah.
Which was interesting to discover.
Is that something that's easy to incorporate into your life regularly, or does it take a lot of work? Because in my experience with polyamory, it was actually a ton of work. Like, it's very difficult to find chances to play or make that a regular part of your life.
Schedule it.
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
Like,
there's a lot of other
it.
shit to do.
There is.
Whereas, like, now with Jen, I can just say monogamous
Hey.
straight sex is very easy to set up.
Right,
It's a
right.
lot
Like she's
easier to
probably
set up.
right there in the
Yeah,
other
she's
room.
basically right there. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I prioritize my self-care, which to me is just pleasure. Like I prioritize pleasure in my life now in a way that I didn't used to. And I know that kink is yummy to me and feels good to me. So I prioritize that. I was in a relationship, and when that ended, like I was doing kink very consistently during that relationship. And when it ended, I was very depressed and stopped really playing. And the combination of that was really bad for my depression.
Right. But also the loss of the relationship, I assume, was the bigger
Right.
piece there. Yeah.
Well, I would say the combination, because the way I do BDSM is like it's part of a community. It's not just with my partner. It's with
Gotcha.
other partners that I've cultivated over time. And so losing the relationship and not feeling the drive anymore and not going to the same places.
So like the
I've had to
community was
begin
still
again.
available to you, but you sort of became reclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's the classic depression, just like, I don't have
feel
the
like-
energy today.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And the
So
area...
self-care even, yeah.
Yeah, it was difficult.
Yeah.
And that was in a different part of Southern California. So I'd cultivated a community there. And then when I moved back to LA, I basically had to start again, which is the
Gotcha.
process I'm in right now.
Right, yeah.
So-
The internet must be the best for that, right? Was that,
It
it's
does
basically-
help. It does
yeah.
help. Like FetLife.com has been really amazing.
There you go. Recommendations, listeners.
Oh yeah. I'm like, hey, check it out. But don't read too much because it can be a total rabbit hole.
Sure.
Get out into your community. Go to munches. Go to classes, please.
Yeah, and on your own recognizance. At the top of the show, there will be a little monologue for me about my own experiences. And in my case, I was sort of, it's not my bag, polyamory, and that's fine. But I sort of tried to convince myself it was.
Yes.
Because as a young man, it's a crazy societal expectation that if the opportunity arises, you should want to do
right.
that.
How could you not?
Exactly. And so, yeah, I just would kind of ignore my own body cues and stuff. I'm wondering, sort of reciprocally with you, like at what age or what was your path to realizing I'm into kink, I'm into polyamory, and sort of having the courage to start exploring that? Yeah, just if you could speak on that.
Sure. I'm so glad you brought up body cues because
Yeah.
as a therapist and educator and when I play, like body cues are everything. Like your body doesn't lie. Like it's actually trying to help you survive. So listen to it. The way that
Listening, Aziz Ansari.
So the way that I kind of came to things, all of my earliest fantasies were about power exchange. I had no language for it, but there was always an element of power, of being kind of taken over. And it's a longish story, so I'll try to shorten it.
Sure. We got time.
Okay.
Show runs about an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the slightly longish, shortest version is these feelings had always been part of my experience. I, after college and after working for a production company that was not going to succeed, like it was clear it was going to kind of sink, I saw an ad on Craigslist, go Craigslist, for an adult-owned and operated women's store.
Okay.
A toy store.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of such a
That's
thing.
great. Yeah, run by women. That's awesome.
It was so cool. And so there was all these books to read about BDSM and about polyamory.
Do they still exist? Sorry to interrupt.
It was called The Love Boutique. They
Love
do
Boutique.
not.
Okay.
But she was in business for like 25 years.
Oh, there you go. Well, successful.
Like very.
Nevertheless, yeah,
I mean,
it just
sex
ran its
still
course.
sells.
Yeah.
I think she just was like, okay, I'm done. Like vibrators and lube are great, and I want to, relocate.
Just count all that lube money on a beach. Yeah, I'm
Like, could you
ready.
blame her?
Yeah,
Just like,
exactly.
and this $1,000 was.
No, yeah. I was in Guatemala once and met a couple who were just there, and 3 months ago they were in France, and 3 months from now they'd be in Spain. And I was like, may I ask what you do, or you just inherited wealth or whatever? And he's like, nah, man, I download porn from every available free website and re-upload it on my own website. And like basically all I do is turn on my computer every day and it does it.
Wow.
And
nomad porn entrepreneur.
Yeah, porn entrepreneurship it also is a huge leader in technology. There's a crazy amount of tech.
Oh my gosh. It's always been the first, what humans do when a new technology comes out is they do something with sex with it.
Yeah, it's weird because we live in a country that makes it seem like you're not supposed to talk about it, but all people want to do is eat and fuck and not die.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it, and then find new things to do stuff with.
And even if we're not going to talk about it, the industry, like, you don't have to talk about it. The money speaks.
The money comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm sorry. Please go on. So you found this great shop.
Yeah, and it was amazing to read all these books and to finally put language to these things that I had always wondered about. So polyamory came up, and alternative relationships, and BDSM, and power exchange relationships, and new relationship energy, and all these amazing ideas. And then I just realize, like, oh, I love talking to people about sex. I love talking to people about what they want, like what brings them pleasure, and how to reduce the shame around it. So I bounced around to different adult stores, ending up finally at the Pleasure Chest, started teaching classes. Okay. Right, that one has been going strong 40 years,
like
something
the McDonald's of sex shops. Yeah.
Although somebody actually called it the Apple of sex shops.
There you go. I'm not trying to denigrate it. Yeah, McDonald's has a bad connotation. Yeah. I just mean there's a lot of them.
I mean, it really...
They're doing all right.
They really are.
Yeah.
They really are. And they were super education based.
That's really cool. I didn't know that about them.
Awesome. So I always recommend that people go and check out the classes there because they're free, and you can just get a sense of like what you want.
See, that's a good date. You do a sur la table cooking class, and then you go to the sex class.
I tell my clients that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to want to know who you're interacting with. You might as well go to a class.
There you go.
And see what you do. So as I was continuing to become a sex educator, I was also like, well, I want to know what this stuff actually feels like. Mm-hmm. So I found a website. Oh, and the biggest thing, I had been told that, kink that's what white people do.
Oh, okay.
Kink was white people stuff.
Sure.
And I don't know if I can swear or not, so I'm editing.
I already said fuck. We're in the clear.
Cool. Okay. But I'll swear too.
Yeah, please do.
So like that was what implicitly I'd been kind of told by culture and other people that.
Also, by the way, white people is not a swear yet. Right? No.
Right. That was not the swearing part.
We're working toward that, but I would hope.
We'll see how the hour goes. And so I had a lot of shame around and a lot of confusion around, like, well, if kink is white people stuff and I'm not white and I like this, then what does that make me? And I thought it made me like a monster or something. Something was wrong with me.
And were you getting that feedback from the Black community around you, or were you just not telling anyone? Okay, yeah, that makes sense too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just kept it very, very quiet.
And sort of building the counter argument in your own brain.
Right, of like,
against
well,
yourself.
I think, maybe
if I did tell them, this is what they would say. Yeah.
Right. And so one day I just kind of screwed up my courage, and I was doing a web search, and I found a website specifically for Black people who did kink.
Awesome.
It led me to a Munch, which is a non-sexual meeting place for kink people.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Can be at a restaurant, just very relaxed. And so I went, and there were Black people. I was not alone or weirdo.
That was a gamble. There might not have been.
Right, and it was in South Bay. So I was just like, I don't know what I'm going into.
But I'm glad there were for you. Yeah.
It was amazing. So somebody invited me to a play party. I played. I had an exquisite experience with this person.
Was there a buffet at the party?
If I remember, there were really good cookies.
Because the house party I went to, there was a buffet, and the food was like not good.
Oh
no, and
so lots of not good food
around naked people. You want the food to be real good. Like, you don't want any iffy food.
Right. Like, it just ruins the whole.
It does. So just avoided that room.
Right. So, hey, public and private dungeons out there, step up your food. So it was just this amazing experience, and it wasn't, there was no sexual contact, although I had an orgasm, and that blew me away of like, oh my gosh, I don't have to engage bodily fluids with somebody to have an orgasm.
Oh,
who
gotcha.
knew?
Yeah.
And then here was somebody who wasn't going to take advantage of that, who just saw that as beautiful and amazing. And we just had this wonderful, wonderful scene.
That's awesome.
And so after that, I was hooked. I'm like, I have to see where this goes.
Yeah.
And that was about 10 years ago now.
It sounds like, and have most of your experiences been very positive?
Yes.
Because
yes, hands down, most of them have.
I don't want to assume, but I imagine, or at these kinds of parties, especially if there's like inebriation, you could run into people who do try to take advantage. Do you have a vetting process? Are you just a great judge of character?
Well,
I mean, obviously, I know no means no. Someone asked, but how do you know who to say no
kind of
to?
know?
Yeah.
Right. And like one's like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, really great questions. What I love about public play and going to public dungeons as opposed to private parties is there is an established culture. And if anybody does any cursory reading about BDSM, you learn that there's such a thing as safe words. There's such a thing as negotiation. There's such a thing that's very, like, every single dungeon, like, you don't drink before you play.
Oh, okay.
You don't do drugs before you play. Not pot, not anything.
Right.
Because the experience itself, like, you don't need, exactly,
sure, yeah.
is the point.
And is negotiation, I'm just guessing from context, but is that like explicit consent up top, like I like this, I don't like this, is that fine?
Yeah, and it
that
can be
kind of
very
thing,
light.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be, sign here, initial here,
of course,
or,
yeah.
like read the subclause.
But I think
basically,
sorry. I was just going to say, I think
please.
it's important for a lot of guys right now to hear that
oh yes,
you can have a highly sexual, like you're describing, a
right,
very
yummy,
erotic, open experience.
yes,
and thorough, knowledgeable consent can be involved. It seems like
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't.
Right, they think that it's
They
one
think
or the
like if you
other.
ask permission, it somehow detracts from the vibe, and that's clearly not the case.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that, because it really, a good negotiation is a collaboration of what hot stuff are we going to do to one another.
That's true.
Like,
it's a
oh, are
flirtation.
you into spanking? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, when I spank, I like to do this. Like, what kind of music do you like to add that in? Oh, I like to be like scratched along the back. Like,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff of what is sexy to you both.
Favorite fuck track? Do you have a go-to?
Well, it's a little old school, but Garbage. There's some great like garbage music I love. Anything with a good rhythm is really
That makes sense. Yeah.
And sometimes I actually don't need words, because if
Sure.
you don't want to be spanked and having this amazing experience and you're like la da 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 da, or like Rihanna's
Here's some
S&M
super deep lyrics that make you think and
Right.
take you out of it. Yeah.
Right, you're like no REM, no any of that.
Well, has that, I wanted to ask, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So are you, I was guessing from context that you're mostly a sub, or are you a dom sometimes? Do you switch back and forth? And for people who don't know those terms, it's just like high status, low status in the exchange. What do you like?
What do you mean by a low status, high status?
Well, please feel free to educate me, because I was never into the kink community.
Okay.
But my understanding, what you said, that what attracted you is the power exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding from media that could be warped and bullshit.
Yes and yes.
Is that it's usually there's like someone who's in charge spanking someone who's not in charge? Or is the reality more like equal collaborators who spank each other, or whatever the kink
Somewhere
may be?
kind of in the middle in terms of what I love about SM and at its best, you can't give power that you don't have. So if you don't feel like you have power, self-esteem, or a good sense of self, it's probably best not to play. Because what it really is I choose, because I like myself, because I know this about myself, I want to give you the authority to choose what we do together.
So do you think it's fair to say, and this is why I bring this up, because it was
Yeah.
true of me, who experimented with polyamory very young, you should have a very concrete sense of self by the time you start to explore. But at the same time, I don't want to just
right. You don't wait until you're like, I completely like myself and everything is fine.
That's
'cause
true.
That's not life.
I don't want to discourage young people who feel urges and feel shame.
Right.
They shouldn't feel that shame. And
No, not
if
at
you're in a
all.
safe place to explore, go for it.
Right.
But at
But
the
learn
same
how to
time,
negotiate. Learn what you like.
for me, I had very low self-esteem. I had no
Okay.
power in the relationship.
Okay.
And so I did whatever. I
The
never
person
spoke.
told you.
I didn't feel that I had a say in anything. Yeah.
Right. And that's not good.
And I was
That's
like
not-
almost trying to work through self-esteem issues by exploring polyamory. My point is kink and polyamory are not a substitute for therapy or self-care.
Right. They can be, I like to tell people, they can be therapeutic, but they're not therapy.
Yeah.
And it can be very powerful. People work out all kinds of stuff and they grow. I've grown in my own self-confidence and self-awareness. But yeah, a good top needs a good bottom who will say, and a top
There
is
you
the
go.
person who does
The
the
words
thing.
I was trying to think of.
Sure. There you go. There's a lot of jargon in the
Right.
scene. I'm not going to lie. So a top is the person who does the thing. A bottom is the person who receives the thing.
Okay.
So spanking, flogging, fire play, a variety of
Anything,
things.
right.
Anything. And it demands that both people communicate and that you care what's happening for the other person,
Yeah.
both people.
Yeah.
So a bottom who communicates like, hey, yellow, can you slow something down? This feels really good. Can you change that?
Yellow's a safe word, I imagine.
Yellow's yes, there's three red, green, and yellow.
Oh, that makes total. Yeah. Good.
Green, of course, like rarely do people say that because they're like, just
Green,
keep going.
green.
Right?
Yeah,
And
it's
you're like,
like-
okay, I'm still going.
It's like you
okay."
can improv if everything's fine. You don't have to stick to the script.
Exactly. So like, I'm just not going to do the green, and you just
Yeah,
keep doing
yeah.
what you're doing. And then yellow means like slow down, check in with me,
Right.
which is one of my favorites. And then red is everything needs to come to a complete and total
Stop
stop.
the presses. Yeah.
Yes. And if you hear red, if you're at a public dungeon and you yell red or say red, any dungeon monitor or any other player who hears that will actually stop what they're doing to check in and see if
There
you're
you
okay.
go. This
So it's
public
community
situation sounds great. Yeah,
That's
I
why-
went to like private house parties and it was not the same vibe.
It could be a little messier, I
Yes,
imagine.
definitely.
You know, and a lot of us don't know this when we're going in, and so things can happen.
Yeah, like someone came, a very attractive woman came up and was like, "Do you want cocaine?" And I was like, "No, definitely not." "Well, do you want to have sex?" "Well, not if you're on cocaine." Like, no.
Right? Like, I feel
So
like this
that was when I was
menu-
like, pool rules would have been good posted on
Yes.
like just
Yes, do not invite
there's
people
no
if you're-
lifeguard on duty. Yeah.
Right, and that's really at certain parties and certain events, it is that exactly. Like
Sure.
no lifeguard, so you have to kind of know
Yeah.
what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and to be able to suss people out, because
Yeah.
there are bottoms who will push a top past their limit. Meaning like the bottom wants to go harder or longer, and the top doesn't like the thing or feels nervous about doing whatever the thing is and doesn't want to do
I
it.
see. You actually don't have that much aggression in you, right? Like,
Right,
that's the
because some
top,
people really
yeah.
want to be hurt pretty badly.
Yeah.
And
well,
certain
everyone's at different parts of their journey, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So tops need to be very careful too about like, don't do what's not sexy to you.
Sure.
And bottoms, like, don't do what's not sexy to you.
Yeah.
And look around.
Yeah.
So I'll watch. I watch people for weeks sometimes to see how they play in different
sure.
circumstances.
Right.
And if somebody is, attractive and I like their play style, hey, you look really interesting. I like what you did over there.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about playing sometime?
Yeah.
And then it's the negotiation is, and I can call a quit to it at any time. If I'm like, you know what, they actually seem kind of skeezy.
Sure,
Never
yeah,
mind.
good. Yeah. Have the confidence to do that if you need to, for
Right.
sure.
And if not confidence, self-preservation.
Exactly.
That's fine. That's a fine thing
Don't
too.
be polite in a
Don't
in a situation where you might be exchanging like the right to have sex with you.
Right.
You don't need to be polite to someone's request.
No,
Yeah.
no, not at all.
That's
Because
what
this
got
is
me
your
in
body
trouble.
and this is your
Exactly.
life.
And yet, if you can navigate it, it's obviously enriched your life greatly.
Oh my gosh.
my-
Friendship, sex, like
My
confidence.
dad became a furry later in life.
Really?
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
greatly enriched his life. The community, I mean, the
There-
sexual aspect, but also just the huge community that he's a part of now.
Right, where
Instant
people don't have
friends.
to. Yes.
Yeah.
The sharing, and I imagine just the joy of I don't have to hide
Absolutely.
anything, and
Well, so that was my
Yeah.
next question for you is how did that transition take place? Because you were saying you screwed up your courage and experienced kink and were like, yep, it is for me.
Right.
And now obviously you're a sex therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You know this is going to be broadcast. So
Yep.
I assume you're open in your life with it.
I am.
How'd that transition take place?
That's been an interesting one and I'm still I can't say struggling with it because I'm still talking to people about that I'm kinky
Sure.
as a sex therapist. But it's something I'm always kind of digesting. As an educator, I was already pretty out about what I was into. And then when I went to school, grad school for my master's program, I knew like I want to talk about sex and I do some of the things that I talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of led with that in all my
Yeah.
classes, to my the other people in my classes, my professors. It wasn't like, hi, I'm Jameelah, I'm kinky and polyamorous. But
Right.
the questions that I would ask, when I asked questions about the career I wanted, it was clearly with, this is my focus.
Yeah. I see you've noticed my nipple clamps. Let me explain.
right.
I'm
I see
Jameelah.
your eyes.
Yeah.
Right? these aren't just jewelry.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
I'm up here. Well, it's kind of unfair. Really draws the eye. Yeah.
And even now, I totally joke with people if it is in a highly eroticized atmosphere and I'm wearing something that's revealing and somebody looks at my breasts,
Yeah.
I'm like, are you looking at my breasts?
Yeah.
And I
That must be a
totally judge
classic.
them. I totally judge them if they're like, no, because I'm like, well, you're a liar then. And if they say yes, I'm like, we should keep talking.
It's also just like, that's an old chestnut at those events, I imagine. That must be a classic.
Totally.
Yeah, some people are just like, aha,
you should be.
good one. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why do you think I'm
Yeah,
this?
exactly.
So much fun to mess with people sometimes. But that was kind of how I led that. What you learn, particularly as a sex educator and just the things I've gone through in my life, if you don't lead with your vulnerability, if you don't lead with what's true for you, that's the weapon. And it very much has to do with my identity as a Black woman, that this is a culture that tells Black women in all kinds of ways, you're either invisible or you don't get to have this, or it only can look like this. And that's crazy. And I will not be driven crazy by this culture.
Yeah.
So I just have gotten very comfortable, even in my discomfort, with leading with like, no, these are all the pieces that I am. I will not let somebody fragment me or show me that I have to show up in a certain way.
Absolutely. Down any line, gender, race, anything.
Right.
It's
I am all these things.
All the data supports that, like it's even crazy that people still think that men are hornier than women is
right, or that men are visual and women aren't. I'm
made
like,
in every sitcom.
Somehow our eyeballs are different.
Right,
Like what?
and it's not true even
at all.
They've jammed electrodes in there. Like women are horny, and everyone of every sexual orientation on the spectrum exists in every body that has ever been created.
There's no man brain, there's no woman
Right,
brain.
exactly.
Like we really need to stop with this stuff.
Maybe on some issues, but certainly not sexuality. I think
it's a
everyone
lot
has
more
their-
fluid than
exactly.
people than what we've been told.
So was that everything was fine with your family? You didn't have any issues there?
Funny you should ask.
I was digging for a good anecdote.
Right. So my parents are not aware that I'm kinky. I think explaining to them power dynamics and all this kind of thing, like, just would not literally make sense for them.
I was really hoping it was you ran into them at an event.
That would be, although I have read about that somebody, I read something where a guy was on a swinger site and literally got, his parents tried to pick him up. Yeah.
The images didn't include his face or something, I imagine.
The images had his parents' face.
What?
That's how, like, there was some back and forth, and they finally sent a picture, and there were his
Hello.
parents.
Yeah. He's like, at least I don't have to break any news to you.
This is true. It's like, now we can just, what are we going to talk about over Thanksgiving?
Exactly.
We now know.
Yeah.
We now know. So we're seeing more and more people now who are second and third and sometimes even fourth generation kinky or polyamorous. And that's been really interesting. There's people in the scene who their mother or their father or both parents are in the scene, and they navigate it. They negotiate it. I negotiate things with my clients around, if I see you at an event, it's up to you if you want to acknowledge me.
Right.
Confidentiality states, like, I won't interact with you. I won't watch you play. Please respect me and don't watch me play. Yeah. And we do that.
That's red.
Right. Red.
Do you, what in your practice, I'm wondering, are there common themes of the issues people come to you with? Or do you have a sense of the pulse of, like, the different sexual stigmas people are largely dealing with right now out there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I became a therapist was I kept getting in trouble for talking to my clients for too long at the store. So that was one. And I was like, where can I talk to my clients a lot about sex? Oh, I'll become a therapist. But, you do something long enough and you start to see the themes and the patterns. And at that point, I'd been doing sex retail for 7, 8+ years, and I kept seeing the patterns, the sense of dissociation from one's body, the stories that people were living of, like, oh, I'm supposed to look like this when I have sex, or it's supposed to feel like this when I have sex, or I should be able to do this, all of which were usually completely incorrect, and were keeping them from having fun, intimate, pleasurable, spontaneous sex. I ran into people who, I can't talk to my doctor about this. Like, I had cancer. I want to get my sex life back. And my doctor won't talk to me about it.
Sure. What are the options, right?
Right.
And
right.
do you think a lot of those expectations, because there's this popular theory that seems to have a lot of credence that the first couple generations are now coming of age that have, or already, I mean, I'm of this generation, probably a pioneer of it, but who could just like turn on a tap and hardcore pornography is available, like an infinite amount. So my sex education was done by watching pornography more than anything else on the internet. And previous to that, people would talk about the fabled time they found a box of porn in the woods or their dad's stash. Like it was harder to, and I think so that behooved more communication. And it's funny, it's a silly thing to think about kids like, wait, how are babies made on the schoolyard? But some kind of education, communication needs to happen. Right. And sex education obviously should officially happen. But I guess I'm wondering if you feel among your client base are a lot of the perceptions around sexuality coming from porn or just from media as a whole, like movies and shows?
I would say both. That working in the store and also in my practice, it's really clear a lot of people are caught up in like, oh, I'm supposed to last this amount of time, or my orgasms are supposed to sound like this. Guys very concerned about the size of their penises. Women feeling like they should be multi-orgasmic.
Sure.
And there's definitely, I would say, a generational piece too, that people probably around 45 and older have a lot more internalized shame, and it's definitely had a pretty significant impact on how they view gender, how they view sex, how they grew up. Whereas people who are, I'd say 40 and definitely like 35, 38 and younger, are a little more fluid. And then the younger you go, it can be a lot more fluid, a lot more curious, a lot more willing to ask questions.
And do you feel that's a simple aspect of aging, or does it give you hope that means that the pendulum is sort of swinging that way societally?
It gives me some hope.
Okay.
Although, there's young people that I've met who are super rigid about gender stuff, who are super rigid about like, oh, I'm supposed to show up like this. Speaking to what you said earlier, a lot of young people can feel like, oh, I have to be super quote unquote evolved and edgy. So I'll get into polyamory, I'll get into kink, or I'll do these things that are so normal now. When that's not really what their sexuality is, and it doesn't feel right for them, but they think that that's how they're supposed to be showing up now. And so that I do grieve, because that's kink and poly are supposed to be accessible, something that is as legitimate as anything else. It's not supposed to be something you do because everybody else is doing it.
Any other reason. Fuck, fear, obligation, guilt.
Right. Any of those. And
have you found in your client base, as in your experience, do people of color have an extra hard time with the societal expectation piece?
With the societal expectation a bit, and certainly with finding spaces within community. That for when I started, there were not many Black people or other people of color in the scene.
I was going to say, do you just have to like be okay with making white friends and having sex with white people, basically?
Be okay, like kind of navigate it of... and the sound that I'm making, the look on my face is because it is so complex.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Valley girl. Like, I grew up in the Valley. I went to UC Santa Barbara. Like, my life has been spent in mostly white circles. And I do have a lot of pain about that because Black people are awesome and we're amazing. Right. And to walk in a room where you see your own is something really special that I have not had a lot of in my life. And it's also forced me to be like, some white people are really cool and some white people are really douchey. And it's hard because you can't always tell. It's not like, your average white person flags immediately.
Absolutely. It's kind of you to give the benefit of the doubt to everyone you meet. But
it would make me crazy otherwise.
That's true. I just think it's an interesting aspect of privilege, and I don't think I have to explain how privilege is apportioned in this country. That it makes a lot of sense, and I saw this when I was in the lifestyle, quote unquote. It was a lot of it was mostly all white events because it's a luxury to be able to feel comfortable enough. This isn't going to hurt my life if it comes out. Like at my job will be fine, or I have all the money I need, whatever the case may be.
Right, that there's a certain...
Yeah, I just think there's an aspect of luxury to exploring your sexuality.
And toys cost money.
That's true, yeah. If you're
events cost money, conferences cost money. So it's a big economic issue.
Sure.
And yeah, there's this piece of like white people have had more space and been allowed to have a variety of sexuality that has been really kind of historically denied to Black people in particular, and then people of color in general. And so for so many reasons, you don't see a lot of people of color in the scene. Sure. There's definitely more now. Which is super exciting. Cool. And I'm just like, yes, like to me, that's liberation. And me coming out as an S-type, as a submissive, and then finally as a slave, like that was a big deal. I had a lot of self-recrimination and shame for that
all
term.
Connections. Yeah. Of course, yeah.
And then I realized like my ancestors did not suffer unspeakable torture and horror for me to be afraid to be who I am.
Or to gain pleasure or joy out of life.
Out of my body.
Exerting your freedom over your own body, right?
The power to consent, the power to choose.
It's unfortunate the words are the same almost. Like, you know, it could...
Yeah, and there
doesn't need to be a connection there, yeah.
Right. And it was a really interesting and painful and fascinating journey to come to terms with the historical truth of slavery in this country. And then where my particular kink desires, where they circulate.
Right.
And there's all kinds of myths still about like, oh, if you're an S-type, then there's something wrong with you. You had something happen to you.
Sure.
You know, all kinds.
You're abused as a child. You don't remember.
Right.
Sure.
That still is so alive and well. And completely untrue.
Yeah, especially among people who are super vanilla and have never tried anything. Like, it's just like,
I'm just like,
you do something that's I wouldn't want to do, and it sounds weird to me. You must be a witch. Like they invent. It's so easy to invent some kind of like.
Life becomes this like Monty Python skit or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really interesting.
Well, let's pivot if we could.
Sure.
To depression a bit, which I hate to do.
It was such a yummy conversation.
I know, and we'll have to have you back for more sex talk, but we have to get to the topic of the podcast.
Which is
sort of the other side of that. Complex issue. And so I always hate asking these questions of people where I'm like, okay, now
maybe you're a bit of a sadist. Have you ever thought about that?
There you go. Maybe it's
channel your inner emotional sadism.
I started the show to see people cry. I'm just realizing that now. It's weird.
Glad I could help you figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, total tangent. 50 Shades of Grey. Does it appeal to you at all? Just because of shared interest, or are you like, I'm sorry, it's just crap?
It is just crap. I am glad that the only thing I'm glad about is that people read it, that it got people curious,
it's mainstreaming it a bit,
that it got people in touch with like, oh, this is interesting to me. I want to find out more. And in the last 4 or 5 years, massive influx of people into the scene. It's been really, really interesting. But I tried to read the first book, and I could not make it past the second chapter.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It was poor writing.
Do you know after the Peanuts cartoon premiered, Beagles became the best-selling dog of all time?
Yeah.
Then after Sideways came out, which wasn't even that big of a movie,
right?
Pinot Noir became the most popular song. We're such goddamn sheep.
It's fascinating. Same thing like when I worked at the Pleasure Chest.
They are individually,
until they find themselves like, yes, people, like a sex toy happens in a movie, and that same week, dozens and dozens of people are like, oh, I saw Sex in the City. Oh, the bunny vibrators that we sold.
Wow.
I mean, it was like the toy of choice for people. They're like, do you have the bunny vibrator? Do you have the bunny?
Miranda. I need the bunny vibrator.
Right. And I'm like, maybe that's not what you're looking for. But they're like, I must have the bunny vibrator. I'm like, okay.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that can be merely comical all the way to very damaging, because that same impulse and that same force and tidal force is absolutely how we get warped views of sexuality.
Right.
So what's the saddest you've ever been?
Into the tangent part. The saddest I've ever been.
But when you are depressed, it sounds like I'm venturing a guess. Please correct me, because you're supposed to speak. But it sounds like a feeling of isolation, certainly from your community.
Yeah, deep isolation, a deep loneliness is what it feels like.
Yeah.
I heard my first depressive episode in 2001. I was in Paris. I was studying abroad for the year, and did not know what this was that was happening to me. But the near my apartment, there was this long road, and it was like brick on one side, and then these the back sides of buildings on the other, and just this long. Il y a 4 pâtisseries near me. It was amazing. I love pastry. It was incredible. But that road, it was just this long road, nobody behind me, nobody in front of me, and that is still what depression feels like to me. Is very powerful. Gray, me along a road, and nobody behind me or in front of me forever.
Yeah.
And
that's a good hell description of hell. Yeah.
You know, like, right. We clo, like there were at least like 2 other people, and you could at least argue for eternity with another person.
Yeah.
But true hell, which is what depression is deep, deep isolation from yourself and others.
Do you feel, well, you described that was your first depression, and I think it's very interesting and important. This is a theme that has come up a lot. You said, I didn't even know what was happening to me. And I think there are people who are lucky enough, and God bless them, to not have full-on depression. But it doesn't mean that their life doesn't have moments of acute grief or challenge or sadness. Can you maybe elaborate in your words how did it feel different? How were you like, this is not just like something bad happened.
Right, I'm not just bummed for a while.
Or grieving about a thing, right.
I mean, it was... just the heaviness, like there was such a weight in doing any normal thing, just the getting up, the taking a shower, the putting on makeup, because this is Paris and you definitely had to like dress well. And
every country has their own societal expectations.
It was fascinating. It was fascinating. Just this cold numbness that I felt all the time, and that I had never... Like I knew what it was to be driven, and I was very driven of like, even though I don't understand this culture and I don't speak the language and I'm not fluent, I have to be perfect. I have to get all A's.
Oh, wow.
So I think for like 6 months, I was just going on straight adrenaline. Yeah.
I'm one of those. We're very prone to depression, because the flip side of that coin is you have like crazy high self-esteem or expectations of your own capabilities. And then in private moments, it's so easy to go, you're not living up to them, you piece of shit.
Right. Right. And you can, and look at you and look at the gap. And
exactly.
And so, and I found myself just doing, like, again, isolating, which I'd always been shy, but I was isolating. Like, I'm not going out of my house for days at a time.
That's not my impression of you.
I truly am an introvert in the sense of I love one-on-one conversations. I get energy from that. And then after this, I'm going to go collapse. But introverts, like, when we're locked into somebody and we feel comfortable, we're little beams of sunshine.
Absolutely. That's why I love this job.
Right? You just get to talk and connect, contained.
Conversations, right.
Oh my God. Like, it's all the things.
But at a party where anyone could walk in and change the course of the conversation, I get too overwhelmed.
Oh, no. Yeah. I'm like, I will be in the kitchen with the cat. Like,
exactly. Yes.
So it was really... and I was drinking more, which I've never been a heavy drinker, and I still couldn't really do more than 2 glasses, but I was like, I was trying to get drunk, even though I couldn't.
Gotcha.
And that was new. And then I was cutting, and that was new. So I'm like, that's a big one.
Okay.
That's a big one. That was frightening and fascinating.
Because in the first episode, I spoke with my mom about cutting as well, and she says she was cutting before it was cool because there was no community. She wasn't aware that cutting was like a thing teens did. So there was
that some do, yes.
There was no, which is another bullshit stigmatization, as people think, upset teens are cutting because it's like a fad. But all I can say is I would never cut myself. It's like I'm too squeamish. There's a reason.
There is a reason. Right. There is a reason.
And kids in isolation have done that, and people have done that dating back hundreds of years.
Yes.
Self-mutilation when you're depressed. May I ask, if it's not too personal, how that... Because I hit myself in the head.
Okay.
And I remember how it started and what my thoughts were, and I'm wondering, how'd you make that leap? Like, what made you feel that was the
thing?
I understand hating yourself or having moments where you loathe yourself or are so numb you want to feel something. Why cutting? I guess I could have said just that.
When people ask me really good questions, I really try to like taste it
and
think about it. I think part of it was I felt so numb and so couldn't feel that I was like, is there anything in there? And cutting was like, oh, there is something in there. Like I'm bleeding. The inside and the outside are now interacting again.
Wow.
And I can see it leave my body and go out. So I must still exist somehow if the inside and the outside.
So just like confirming cause and effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause and effect and some sort of, like when, at least for me, the numbness was like acute pain. And that's like, it's pain at such an acute pitch that it almost feels numb. And so, and it's global. And so the cutting was specific. It was blessed specificity.
Distracting in a way. Yeah.
It was highly focusing.
Pain. Right.
It was highly focusing.
Take your mind off it.
Right.
For a minute.
Oh, there's, this is the weather, but right now this is what's happening.
Right.
This cut, this swelling of the blood, this taking care of the wound, feeling the specific pain and not the global acute pain.
Did it feel, because I think these things can coincide, but I also want to leave room to differentiate them. Would you say that you were suicidal or had the suicidal impulse, or is cutting can be different than that? Do you know what I'm getting at?
I do. There's actually a lot of really great research out there, and two of my clinical colleagues do workshops on specifically cutting and self-harm and differentiating it between suicidality and self-harm and what is happening.
Right.
When is it one? When is it the other? When do they intersect and when do they diverge?
When can it escalate to suicidality, or when will it never get to that? Because that's not what they're doing.
Because that's not what it's about.
That's not what they're doing.
And how do we do harm reduction? How do we make space for that actually cutting sometimes or doing other quote unquote self-mutilation can actually, like, it is a reach for life is really what it is. It's actually not a reach for death.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think that was true in my mom's case too. She said it made her feel alive. Right. It wasn't suicidal at all. She thought it was like combating kicking against the wall of depression and raging around her. Raging against the machine. Absolutely.
So I'm a big fan of harm reduction when it comes to self-harm. And I wish I'd had, again, that language back then. But I knew enough of actually I read it just a couple of days ago. Somebody said, I didn't want to kill myself. I just hated my life. And I was like, that
resonates so deeply.
It.
You just think this movie sucks and you don't expect it to get any better and you wish it would stop.
Right.
But you don't want to, unless you do. And I think we'll do shows specifically about suicidality.
Right, where there really is, I do want to not be here.
But for me, it's always been, the fleeting thoughts of suicide are more like, God, wouldn't that be sweet?
Right, just a lack of pain for me.
But I have empathy and I'm blessed to have enough connection in my life that I'm like, I can't do that. My brother would be devastated. My parents would be devastated. I have a girlfriend I love very much.
Devastated.
I can't put that much pain out into the world. I just wish I could have not been born rather than killing myself. Yeah.
Right, which has a very different, very different feel.
Vibe. Yeah.
And I think it's so important. That's why I thought this coming on here was such an awesome idea, to talk about the nuances of depression and self-harm and suicidality. And for some people, depression is linked to self-loathing. For others of us, it really is like a deep loneliness. And that, for me, made me feel very alienated from the usual talk of depression. Because I don't dislike myself. I don't hate myself. I don't loathe myself.
So you're even judging whether you were having the right kind of depression?
No,
why is my depression the same as their depression?
I was never judging it. That's the thing. Good. My primary stance, and I think this is because of how my parents raised me and because of being a Black woman in this country, I automatically know that most people's story is not my story and that they're not making room for my story.
That didn't shock you to find out, right?
Exactly. So I knew, they're having a different experience and that's not my story. I need to figure out what mine is, not try to make my story conform to theirs or feel that there's something wrong with my story. Yeah. So for me, it literally has just been I'm a big reader. I spend a lot of time in my head. I'm very sensitive and I pick up people's emotions a lot. And this culture can be really harsh towards introverted, quiet, smart, fat little black girls.
Oh yeah,
who are in the valley.
I believe you. I was gonna say especially LA.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's rough out there.
It's very rough.
Yeah.
And so my feelings have always been around like, oh, I feel just not like that, I don't have a place and that I'm not seen. And so that in that deeply internalized loneliness is what it is. And so that's where I've always been like, oh, other depressed people, like I want to comfort you.
There's a few different genres of depression.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want space for all of them, but definitely ones like mine.
I just wrapped up a podcast where we covered all the works of Kurt Vonnegut.
And, that's intense.
I think he elucidated, obviously, a depressive attempted suicide. Mom drank bleach on Mother's Day. So, like, you see where it came from.
Right. It's a really complex family.
Very
really
complex
brilliant
family.
And complex.
But I also think he elucidated a genre of depression I didn't know existed that sort of overlaps with my own, which is a very privileged form of depression, which is to be in a cozy enough life where you're not going to starve and your job's going okay, to start thinking about like, am I as happy as everyone else is? Am I getting the rewards, the bounteous rewards of life that everyone else is sucking out? Like, does my joy feel as joyful as their joy? Or to take it back to the topic of the day, like, and I used to wonder this, I hope my orgasm is good. Like, I hope it feels good, but how do I know it feels as good as other people are getting?
Yes.
What if I have an unfair, shitty orgasm?
And other people are having awesome orgasms.
Ones
and
that
I'm
I don't
stuck
know
with
about.
This.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And how can I get that? Yeah.
Exactly.
That's funny and painful and very real
Yeah.
and very real. And I think like that's, conversations across different ethnicities is such a challenging and interesting conversation to have because a lot of my clients have been white. I've worked with both at in sex retail and then as a clinician with a lot of white men and seeing kind of what the stuff is that they're carrying. And it's been interesting. It's been really interesting and painful and very I'm like, wow, that is a completely different experience. You know, that's completely embedded in their social capital and social experience.
The world. That's so interesting.
So when it comes to if somebody is white and cis and male, and is having depression, I still lean towards go make some meaning in the world. Go leverage your privilege and go have your life mean something, because like the average white male life, like it's completely like privilege and it's with its own pain.
Sure.
But go mean something to people. Rest when you need to, but take that you've got, that you just got because you were born this way.
Right.
And please go make it mean something.
Yeah.
And maybe that you'll find you, not just white male, but you'll find you in the doing of that.
Oh, it always does. Like it's an ancient truth or like wisdom from the ancestors that everyone just keeps forgetting or choosing to ignore. Like you feel like you'd somehow lose something if you devote your precious time to helping others. You feel amazing. Like it makes you feel great.
You come back to yourself.
It's one of life's great pleasures. Like you benefit greatly from helping others. Yeah. Altruism is almost non-existent. I feel like being altruistic is rewarding.
Right. It is.
Viscerally.
And people get into like, are people altruistic? Like we are designed to connect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Humans are designed to connect. And
even the introverted ones who feel like that's not the case sometimes. Yeah. You got to put yourself out there, man.
Right. In little bursts, like at this point, I go to very specific parties. I try to connect one-on-one or one-on-two. On once a week, twice a week. And that's sufficient. Yeah. And then when I train, like, okay, I'll talk to 100 people, but then like I'm decompressing with one person.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. It comes in waves.
Absolutely.
Have you ever, because we like to end on combating depression or because everyone has different methods. Yeah. And everyone has things they've tried that didn't work and things they've tried that did work. And a classic symptom of depression is sort of an inability to access your joy. So I'm just wondering, have you ever gone to a kink event to try and break a depression, or would you not even like mix those worlds? And then did it work? Right.
Each of those pieces. I know things definitely shifted for me when I stopped worrying so much about, am I getting pleasure or is my pain being reduced? And so when I'm really depressed, I focus on like that sense of, is my pain being reduced?
Yeah.
Is there anything that reduces it even just a little bit? And I'll trust that I'll get to actively feeling pleasure another time. You know, it's that feeling like when you've thrown up like violently,
Right.
Horrible experience,
Yep.
horrible. But oh my God. And you're like, please somebody just end it for me now.
Yeah.
And then after you're like, I have the absence of pain and I feel glorious.
It feels like a hit of morphine or
Right?
something. Yeah.
Just the absence of pain does
Yeah.
that. So sometimes when I'm deeply depressed, that's what I aim for. And I feel very lucky. Not just lucky, but no, I'm going to pat myself on the back.
Please do.
I'm really pleased that I've had the courage to, over time, to cultivate support, that I literally can call up people and be like, hey, I need a spanking, or hey, I need you to hurt me a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's negotiate a scene, or I'm going to go out tonight. Are you going to be at the club? Can we play?
Mm-hmm.
And even just using it, can we play, helps get me a little bit back into life.
Right. And that's good to know for people who might find it scary. I found it scary. But if you have the urge, but you're scared, you do quickly, it seems like you meet people. It's not always meeting 100 strangers. Like if you just hate the social awkwardness aspect, you quickly develop tight-knit groups. And I see that with my dad as well. Yeah.
You know, and going, like I said, going to munches and going to classes, because you go to a few and you'll see the same people who are trying to get
sex events.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we have something to talk about, and you can like let that kind of yummy erotic energy arise or not, and you're not pressured to show up sexually explicitly or do anything.
Or hire Jameelah, and she
You
will
could also
solve
do
all
that.
of your sex problems.
I will certainly do my best, and I'm pretty good.
Well, do you have any words of wisdom to end on? We're about out of time.
Oh my gosh, no pressure there.
I'm definitely going to have you back. We obviously could talk for hours and hours,
right?
But
we haven't talked about sci-fi.
I know. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything, because I can be too interrupty sometimes. Did I trample on any thoughts you came with that you wanted to share?
I mean, there's always so much, like, this is my passion. This is the life that I want, talking about pleasure and sex and how it can be transformative.
Yeah.
So I think I always tell my friends, and all my friends know this, I speak about yummy. Find your yummy, track your yummy, follow your curiosity. Like, your body will never really lead you wrong. Follow your curiosity and have fun.
Yeah. And to bring a down note to it, as a recently recovered alcoholic, a theme that's come up frequently is your body will also tell you what you shouldn't be doing. Or if there's things that your brain's convinced you want to do, but they make you sick physically, maybe consider if you might be in a little bit of a delusional state. You don't really want that.
Yes.
And that has, for me, included bad relationships, bad sexual scenarios, substance abuse. My body always knew what my limit was and told me when, like, that's enough, you should cut yourself off. It was my stupid brain that kept going. Yeah.
Right. The body is wise.
Listen to your body. That's a great place to end, I think, for this episode.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much
This
for
was great.
brightening the pit. It's very yummy in here now. I think that's it.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
My deep thanks to Jameelah, and I hope this was an enlightening conversation for you. If you're still imagining me naked, I'm sorry. Hang in there. This too shall pass. I'll see you next time in the pit. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.